Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Welcome into another edition of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. Today is Thursday, September 3rd, and this is episode number 261 of the Baseball Podcast. I appreciate you guys tuning in today. Hopefully you had a great start to the week out there. We are heading ever so closer to Labor Day weekend. Pretty crazy. The month of September is already upon us, which means we are in the final push of Major League Baseball. We are now on the decline. We are on the back nine of the 2020 baseball season. Can't believe we've gotten there already, but we are. We are coming down the stretch, and you guys have realized that if you've been listening to the podcast this week. Everybody's talking about their trade deadline reactions, winners, losers, who completed trades, how many players, the Padres, 9 trades, 20 players, just absurd numbers going back and forth. The Yankees stand pat. The Rangers don't trade Lance Lynn. The Braves don't really add anybody. The Twins and White Sox stand pat. I mean, you had a ton of winners, a ton of losers across the board, and I was going to give you guys my input or my take on the trade deadline that just took place. But unfortunately, the baseball gods had a different plan in mind for us here today. As of time of recording here, late Wednesday night, it recently became public that Tom Seaver has passed away. The Hall of Fame pitcher and the Mets legend, the best Met to ever play, according to some out there. He passed away at the age of 75 this evening. It was a combination of COVID-19 as well as dementia. So unfortunately, a baseball legend has since passed away. And I wanted to talk about Tom for the first segment here. I wanted to dive in. I myself, 31 years old, obviously never got to see Tom pitch. As I'm looking into his stats, he finally hung him up in 1986 at the age of 41. But Tom Terrific, or the Franchise, were a couple of nicknames for Tom Seaver. And I was looking into his backstory. Let's just kind of start with how he ended up in the major leagues. He went to USC, California kid, pretty awesome there. Goes to Southern California. He was unsure whether he was worthy of a scholarship, so he was sent to pitch in the Alaska Gold Panners. After a stellar season, he was awarded a scholarship as a sophomore. He then pitched to a 10-2 record at USC and was drafted in the 10th round of the 1965 draft by the Los Angeles Dodgers, when Seaver then asked for $70,000. So imagine that, a draft pick getting turned down. $70,000, the Dodgers passed. Then in 1966, Seaver signed a professional contract with the Atlanta Braves, who took him in the first round of the secondary draft. However, the contract was voided by baseball commissioner William Eckert because his college team, USC, had played 2 exhibition games that year, and even though Seaver himself hasn't played, he was then ruled ineligible because he couldn't have a pro contract. The NCAA ruled him ineligible, and then Seaver's father complained to Eckert. They went back and forth. There were lawsuits. Other teams could match the Braves' offer because he couldn't accept the Braves' offer. The Mets subsequently awarded his signing rights in a lottery drawing among the 3 teams. Apparently, it then came down to the Phillies, the Indians, and the Mets, and there was a lottery style of drawing to see who could match the Braves' terms from originally in 1966. I mean, I'm reading it here online, and I'm having trouble following it myself. So if you're listening out there going, Kev, what the heck are you talking about? I have no idea. Things were crazy back in 1966, apparently. So he was with the Braves, but then they ruled him ineligible, which then forfeited his contract. So there were 3 other teams up for bid. They did a lottery style, and voila, the New York Mets win and ultimately get the best player in the history of the franchise. So pretty fascinating how that ultimately worked out. So let's fast forward then to his big league career. He only played in the minor leagues for 1 year. He went 12-12, went straight to AAA out of USC, out of college. So it makes sense, fast riser out of college. But he then played for 10 seasons for the New York Mets from 1967 to 1976. He came up, he won Rookie of the Year his first year. He went 16-13 with a 2.76 ERA in 34 starts, over 250 innings. 170 strikeouts. And that's the other thing. Tom Seaver was known for the strikeout. When he hung him up, he was 3rd in strikeouts in the history of baseball. Now, I think he's since dropped down to 6th all time, if I'm not mistaken. He has 3,640. Yeah, I know the likes of like Randy Johnson and those types of individuals that have since passed him. But back when he hung him up, he was only in 3rd place in the history of baseball for total strikeouts. And he was an all-star his first, 7 years. And then something happened in 1974. He had a down year. He only went 11-11 with a 3.2 ERA, so he didn't make the All-Star team that year. And then 3 straight All-Stars after that, including Cy Young Awards before and after. So 1974, he goes 19-10 with a 2.08 ERA and 290 innings. Wow, that is just insane. 290 innings in 36 starts. Let's do some quick math here. 290 divided by 36. That's about 8 innings a start. That's unbelievable. What? I can't even imagine somebody averaging above 6.5, 7 when it comes to current baseball. Being right at 8. Oh my goodness. 18 games finished, 18 complete games, 3 shutouts, Cy Young Award. Then the next year, like I said, 11-11, 320. Well, he got upset again that offseason because he came back, bounced back, and went 22-9 in 1975 with a 2.3 ERA and 280 innings. So the same amount of starts, 10 less innings. Another Cy Young and MVP. He finished 9th as well. The highest he ever finished in the MVP voting that year was another year he won the Cy Young, his 3rd year in the major leagues. 1969, Tom Seaver went 25-7 with a 2.21 ERA and 273 innings. He was 1st in the Cy Young, 2nd in the MVP voting. Let's see who he finished behind in the MVP that year. It was Willie McCovey, but by only 22 points. So very close finish there. Both had 11 first-place votes. But McCovey just outweighed him across the board. Let's see. McCovey hit 320 with 45 homers and 126 RBIs. So reasonable to see how he outlasted Tom Seaver. But, man, what a year for Tom. So let's see. That's the most wins in a year, 25, 22, 21, 21, and 20. He does have a career 311 victories, as he is part of that 300 win club that we're not sure anybody will ever get to once again. His best ERA year was the year of 1971. As a 26-year-old, he had a 1.76 ERA in 35 games. That was the only year under 2. But he had 15 years for an ERA under 3 here. Just fascinating. All spread out through the late 70s. There's even one 1981 for Cincinnati here where he had a 2.54 ERA. He was Mr. Durable, averaging 35, 36 starts per year. Complete games, he had 21 in 1971. And then there are other years, 19, 19, 18, 18, 18. There are guys who don't even start 18 games a year now in today's game, in today's rotation. And even if you do, it's 30. Okay, so you miss half the year out of 36 starts. He had a complete game in 21 of them. That's almost 2/3. I mean, 24 would be exactly 2/3. So it's insane. That's 55% of games he's finishing. Then he went 19 for 37. So call it 50% of games. I mean, that's 3-4 years where 5, 6, 6 years where Tom Seaver's starting, and half the time he's finishing the game. I mean, that's just unheard of in today's world. Again, 290 innings twice in his career, 1970 and 1973. Then he had a 286 and 280. So definitely didn't have issues there. Strikeout highs, let's see, 289 in 1971, 283 in 1970, then 251, 249, 243. So 4 years above 240. Very impressive for Tom Seaver, and just fascinating to kind of follow his career. But he did end up moving on from the New York Mets. He played 6 years in Cincinnati. He went 75 and 46 with a 3.18 ERA. So he was definitely just as effective in Cincinnati for his time there after he moved on from the New York Mets. He was in Cincinnati from 1977 through 1982. And then at the age of 37, he went back to the New York Mets in 1983. Had a solid year for them, then moved on to the Chicago White Sox. Let's see here, for a total of 3 years. 33 and 28 for the White Sox, and then 5 and 7 for the Boston Red Sox 1 year at the age of 41. Only a 3.80 ERA in 16 starts, so certainly not embarrassing himself as a 41-year-old there in year 20 in 1986. Oh, my goodness. Just impressive stats from Tom Seaver. And looking at some of his top moments here, number one is the imperfect game. He was perfect through 8 innings, but had his only perfect opportunity broken up in the 9th back in 1969. Just a bitter disappointment for his career. Wall-to-wall dominance. Let's see, in his 4th start in 1970, he struck out 19, which was tied for then the record for a single game. He was untouchable as the game went on. He struck out the last 10 batters of the Padres that he faced, so clearly went stronger as things moved along there. Let's see, he earned his 300th win in New York and the Bronx. In 1985, he did so as a member of the White Sox, not the Mets, but it was still in the Bronx, so that's impressive. And then let's see. Oh, here's a good one. We can wrap up this first segment and kind of communicating Tom Seaver through. This is Tommy Lasorda's scouting report for a 20-year-old pitcher who's 6 foot 185 by the name of Tom Seaver. He's throwing 73 with life on his fastball. His curve is 63. Could improve with right instructions. Attitude's good. Aggressiveness is good. He is a prospect. Physical description. Let's see. Well-built with good actions. Okay? Again, this is handwritten from 1965 here. So if I kind of stumble through this, let's see if we can read Tommy's handwriting. Okay, remarks. This boy, he keeps calling him a boy in this. This boy showed a real good fastball with good life, has real good command of point of release. Boy has slider type of curve, but could improve with good arm action and should be able to command. Up with good curve, whatever that means. Good command with up good curve. I'm trying to read it. This is crazy. Boy has plenty of desire to pitch and wants to beat you. So, I mean, it's gibberish reading it there, but basically he was saying that Tom Seaver has good life on his fastball, trying to work the breaking ball a bit off of that, and just watching some highlights. I mean, he played before miles per hour were a thing. I'm trying to Google to see how hard he threw. Was he 96? Was he 90? Was he 88? What was the average miles per hour back then? But you watch his mechanics, and he strikes you as just a guy 6 foot, 6'1". He's got 3/4 arm action, a nice leg kick, really works the length and the whip of the arm action at that 3/4, which again leads Tommy to believe he has slider type of curve, more left to right as opposed to 12-6 because he's more out at that 3/4 arm action angle. But once again, Tom Seaver passing away at the age of 75. and I just wanted to take some time and kind of dive in and talk about his career in more detail, because as a 31-year-old, I never got to see him play. I know his name. I know he's a Hall of Famer, 12-time All-Star, Rookie of the Year, 3-time Cy Young winner. But you don't really kind of go in and look at the stats and realize that the guy throws 290 innings in a year, or the guy's got 280 strikeouts, and you look at today's game, and if they throw 200 innings, they're a workhorse, or they're going to get injured. And his baseball reference is 290, 80, 80, 80, 80, 80. And guys, again, they're going 180, and it's like, whoa, pump the brakes. We don't know what's going on here. So thoughts and prayers out to Tom Seaver's family, out to everybody who involved, who knew him. Again, it was a combination of dementia and COVID-19. So 2020 strikes again. Takes another good guy down, but Tom, terrific, Mr. Franchise, rest in peace. Just wanted to give you shouts here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast. But that'll wrap it up for the first segment. We'll pause right now for a word from one of our sponsors, one of our sister shows. But when we come back, I'll get into the power rankings. We'll kind of go that way, post-trade deadline, where I think everybody stands. So stick around, everybody. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. We'll be right back.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back to today's episode of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. This is episode number 261 of the Baseball Podcast. Before we dive into these power rankings, I just want to bring up the Aroldis Chapman issue with the Tampa Bay Rays and what went down in the Bronx the other night. Chapman getting a 3-game suspension, Aaron Boone getting a 1-game suspension for Chapman throwing a 101-mile-an-hour fastball right over the head of a Rays batter. And honestly, I don't know the full backstory between the Yankees and the Rays and what exactly went down, although Chapman said once again, of course, as they always do, it slipped. And, no intention. I didn't mean to just miss him by a few inches up behind his head. And if it was intentional, of course, you got to suspend the guy, and there are huge issues. You can't throw up near or around the head. We've talked about that many times. Everybody knows that. But if you throw it in the bum area or the tuchus, you're good to go. But you can't go up around the head. So the moment that happens, you got to sit him down. You got to suspend him. You got to talk to him. And even if it is unintentional, I think you got to sit him down for a game or two, because it was nowhere near the location. And Aroldis Chapman doesn't miss by a couple of feet. I mean, we've seen him now long enough in his career to realize that, hey, yeah, this isn't Wild Thing from Major League Charlie Sheen coming out of the bullpen. Now, he doesn't know exactly where it's going every time, but upright by the head at 101, yeah, that's not a miss against a right-handed hitter. If you're going to miss that way, you're going to miss arm side, not glove side, and that's certainly intentional. So we'll have to wait and see how Major League Baseball reacts to that one, and ultimately if they uphold the 3-game suspension. My gut's telling me they'll reduce it to 2. I think Aaron Boone, not Brett Boone. Aaron Boone served his 1-game suspension. Chapman is appealing, so he's allowed to play in the meantime. But, I just very quickly wanted to bring that up. Not huge news, because everybody knows you can't throw at or around the head. So once that happens, bench is clear. We're going to have conversations, and there will be suspensions that follow, which is exactly what happened. So ultimately, a couple of games for Aroldis Chapman. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but it will be fun come playoff time if Tampa and New York do run into each other and ultimately end up in a 7-game series. So let's dive in now to the power rankings, kind of post-trade deadline, post-trade acquisitions. I was going to get into some winners and losers like I had mentioned, but unfortunately we had other topics to discuss there in the first segment of today's show. But now we're going to look at the rankings, and we'll go from top to bottom. I mean, I don't want to leave you guys in suspense, going 31-1. That one's a little bit more difficult to navigate. So I kind of look at things like in increments of 5. And even really at the top of baseball, it's the top 3 and kind of everybody else at this point, in my opinion. You're really looking at the LA Dodgers, the Tampa Bay Rays, and the Oakland Athletics. And yes, those are the 3 best records in baseball. Again, here as everybody's wrapping up performances Wednesday night, the Dodgers 27-10 currently, Tampa Bay 25-12, Oakland 25-12. So I have those three teams at the top, and I really have them a cut above everybody else. And this is where I start to look at, okay, is this where the second team in the National League comes into play, or is this where the American League continues to just dwarf everybody but the Dodgers? So let's have this discussion right now. Let's try to figure it out. Where do the Padres fit in now amongst the American League teams with the likes of, let's go 2 through whatever, the Rays, the Athletics, then you have the Indians in that conversation, who are tied at first place with the Chicago White Sox at 22-14. Both teams absolutely loaded, plus 40 run differential. And then you have the Yankees at 20-14 as well. The Twins, they've lost a couple in a row at 21-16. The Astros at 19-15. Where are you putting the Padres in there? Where are you putting the Cubs? Where are you putting the Braves? It's those 3 teams amongst the American League in that middle tier. And that's where after the trade deadline, after adding Mike Clevinger, yes, they gave up a lot. They got a lot, crazy amount of turnover. Again, what was it, like 20-something guys involved in interactions with the Padres? I think they got themselves better. I think ultimately they're now the second best team in the National League, because looking at the Braves in that starting rotation, I can't buy Malone starting a playoff game. I just can't do it. And then there's too much hope involved for that not to happen. Now, I could buy the Chicago Cubs in their rotation, but you start to look at those two aligning, and I think San Diego may now have the slight advantage in regards to the Clevinger addition and the depth. So I have the Padres at number 4. This is where I go back to the American League now for that next tier, looking at the Yankees, the Indians, and the White Sox at 5, 6, and 7. Dodgers 1, Rays 2, A's 3, Padres 4, Yankees, Indian, White Sox. Then I put the Chicago Cubs in there to round out the top 8, with both teams in Chicago being number 7 and number 8, because the Cubbies offensively, I don't think line up with the White Sox and the Yankees offense when it comes to those teams being at full strength. Yes, New York down Giancarlo Stanton. Yes, they're down Judge. DJ LeMahieu missed a ton of time. I'm kind of ranking these guys based on full strength and ultimately where I think they'll finish and where they end up. Like I said, this is kind of a post-trade deadline power rankings, which means if you're adding Judge and you're adding LeMahieu in the month of September, that's almost like a trade on your end. The Tampa Bay Rays have 11 pitchers or 10 pitchers currently on the injured list that should be coming back in the next couple of days. One of them was Charlie Morton, who made his first start in quite some time tonight and had some electric stuff for the Rays once again. So I think the Yankees and the White Sox, they match up a bit better with the Cubs. Then I put the Indians in that conversation. You could probably talk me into switching them, but until Cleveland kind of fades and falls off, they've just continued to prove me wrong. I thought they'd take a bit of a step back this year, but 22-14 right there again in the AL Central, and right there going to give teams trouble come postseason play. So right after that level of team, you kind of have this next tier of teams that are going to make the playoffs, but if I really look at the rosters, aren't good enough to make a run at the World Series, even though their fan bases aren't going to want to hear that. And that is the number 9 team I have is the Minnesota Twins. I think what's going on in Minneapolis, it's just been crazy. They've come back to earth here at 4-6 in their last 10. Jose Barrios has been up and down. Yes, Dobnak, as a rookie, has been fantastic in the rotation, but when you're losing 3 straight to the Tigers here in the middle of the year, it's not a good look for the Twins. And I don't know, Josh Donaldson should be coming back off the injured list. Again, that's kind of like a trade. It's an addition here, post-trade deadline, excuse me. So the Twins, they got some work to do. They got to figure out some things pitching-wise. I do like their bullpen. I do like some of the talent they have back there. Trevor May, Taylor Rogers continue to be effective. So I do think they could make a run on things, but I just don't see it. Next is the Atlanta Braves. Like I said, 21-14, leading the National League East. I would have had them winning 100 games, but with the injuries they're facing, especially to their rotation, Hamels down, King Felix, Soraka now out, and Tommy Milone, if you're telling me he's starting a playoff game, and in particularly a game 3, that potentially could be a 1-1 series tie in the most pivotal game in your entire season, and you're running out Tommy Milone, who you traded for to improve your game 3, you might be going home in that first round. I mean, if you line up with a team with some depth, yeah, you steal game 1 or win game 2, but with the shortened season, a condensed season, limited off days, you're not going to be able to run your top horses out there as often as you could in the past. I mean, even last year, a la Strasburg and Scherzer, but even going back 10 years, CC Sabathia going every 3 days for the Milwaukee Brewers back in 2008 for the entire month of September. It's not going to be feasible this year. So teams with more depth in the starting rotation, I think, are going to benefit with this playoff format and the expansion of the playoffs. At number 11, I have the Houston Astros. Same deal with them. I thought they were going to make a move for starting pitching. Zach Greinke has been phenomenal. He's been very entertaining to watch. He's out there grunting, throwing 54 miles an hour, calling his own pitches. He's just a super entertaining, competitive person who has learned how to pitch now as opposed to overpower hitters, and he just deceives hitters. He keeps the ball hidden behind his head until the last minute. Everything comes out of the same slot. He throws fastballs and changeups the same miles an hour sometimes. He is just a mix of everything. I mean, you call a fastball, you don't know if it's coming 93 or 83 or anywhere in between. So if you can catch a Zach Greinke start, do yourself a favor, and those are entertaining. At number 12, I have the Philadelphia Phillies. I have them. They're now 17-15 on the year. They are 2 games over 500 for the first time in a long time. I don't know if that's exactly true, but it sure feels like it as a Phillies fan. But their starting rotation, the last 2 nights going against the Washington Nationals, facing Patrick Corbin and Max Scherzer. Well, Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola went 16 scoreless innings, or 15 scoreless innings, I think it is. It is just, oh man, it is fun to watch those 2 guys at the top. The bottom end of the rotation trying to figure things out. Zach Eflin was good. Arrieta bad. Spencer Howard starting to put it together. But they made multiple additions in the bullpen. Their entire bullpen has overturned from the worst bullpen in baseball. They added 4 guys via the trade, and then you get 2 guys, 1 via call-up, 1's coming back from the COVID-19 list who hasn't played all year. So they're going to have 6 new guys available in that bullpen, and then a couple of holdovers from last year, and you're going to see upwards of 8 guys who weren't getting the baseball for this team in the bullpen in the month of August, who now will be in September, and they could potentially make a run. Because if you get those top 2, again, in that rotation, best of 5, you're getting 3 starts from Wheeler and Nola. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to that. I certainly am. But this is where it starts to kind of fade just ever so slightly. Next up, I got the St. Louis Cardinals, who are floating around 500. Again, they have a ton of games to make up, 4-6 in their last 10. I have them kind of packaged with the Toronto Blue Jays, who keep winning games, losing games, but 6-4, now 19-16. We're seeing the kids perform really well. It looks like they're going to make the postseason here as the 3rd team out of the AL East and one of the 2 wild card contenders. Them and the Miami Marlins, 16-16 for the Marlins. They are 5-5 in their last 10. They have a ton of games to make up, but as they continue to hang around here, them, the Blue Jays, what are we getting? As well as the Detroit Tigers. I can't figure these guys out. One week I talked to you guys, they're not doing very well. The next week, they've won 6 in a row. Now they're 8-2 in their last 10, and they're back to 17-16, over 500, and squarely in the wild card conversation. And not only are they not beating bad teams, they're beating good teams. They're beating the Cubs. They're beating the Twins. Now they're beating the Brewers. It's just, I mean, they lose 10 in a row, and now they win, 7 of 8, 8 of 10. I don't know what's going on in Detroit. I've given up trying to figure out if they're good or not, so I'm lumping them right in this 500 crowd that includes the Phillies, Cardinals, Blue Jays, Marlins, Tigers, Rockies, Giants, Orioles, all of these teams right around 500, depending on which day you're looking at and whether or not they're hot or cold, but they're all slightly under 500 now. Then we got this next tier of teams that did add at the trade deadline, such as the Cincinnati Reds, the New York Mets, and then I have the Baltimore Orioles right behind them because the Orioles sold at the trade deadline. They sold Malone, they sold Kyle Givens. They know their time frame and they stuck with it, continuing to plug forward for the future, rebuild and not kind of jump on this hot start. The Cincinnati Reds, they added at the deadline, even though they're right there. And like I said, the Mets, the Brewers, the Diamondbacks, the Nationals keep losing. They're a surprise being all the way down here in the 24 slot. The Diamondbacks in the 23rd position, Brewers 22. Those were three teams with clear-cut playoff aspirations in a National League that honestly isn't as deep or it's a little bit deeper, but it isn't as good as the American League. So that's certainly got to be frustrating as a fan of one of those teams and how they've performed kind of year to date. And then these bottom 5 to 7 or 8 are just not good ball clubs. I mean, you got the Kansas City Royals, the Seattle Mariners, the Texas Rangers, the LA Angels, the Boston Red Sox, and the Pittsburgh Pirates rounded out. From 25 to 30 there, just not very good. 20 to 25, certainly disappointing. Some guys still holding out hope. 15 to 20, we don't know what the heck's going on with any of these 500 teams. Tigers, Rockies, Marlins. 10 to 15 are the teams that will make the playoffs, but honestly aren't good enough to make a run. Braves, Astros, Phillies, Cardinals. 6 to 10 are the teams that are good, but not great. Indians, White Sox, Cubs, Twins, all these playoff teams. And then 1 through 5 are teams that are deep enough or playing well enough to possibly win a World Series this year. Dodgers, Rays, A's, Yankees, those types of squads. But that'll wrap it up here for the second segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. We'll pause right now for a word from one of our sponsors, one of our sister shows. But when we come back, we'll dive into the updated odds, see where all the money's at with MVP, Cy Young, Rookie of the Year. Let's see if we can find some value for you guys out there. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. We'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back, and thanks for listening to today's episode of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. This is episode number 261 of the Baseball Podcast. If you haven't done so yet, check us out on social media. Head to Facebook, head to Instagram, Twitter, follow the GSMC Baseball Podcast, as well as the GSMC Podcast Network. They're on LinkedIn, across the board. as well as rate and review the podcast. We appreciate it wherever you're listening to this right now, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, whatever platform you're checking us out on. Please do us a favor. Leave a 5-star rating, write a review. If you do, I'll read them here on the show. We haven't had one since last week, so no new updates for you guys here. But we love to continue to make it a community effort here moving forward. We love to interact, so reach out on social media, DM me. Let's have a conversation. And especially here in this third segment, since we're going to be talking about how me and you can make some cash, make some money. Let's talk about it here. Of course, this is where it is legal in your state, state by state. I myself, Pennsylvania, one of our sponsors, Rivers Casino. Big fan of Rivers Casino. They're not paying me to say this here live, but I use them. So, hey, I love it. They've been good with me. They pay me. I pay them. You know, it's a great open relationship. I win. They give me the money. I lose. They take the money. No problem. So I wanted to catch some updates on MVP and Cy Young Awards. Kind of instead of giving you my picks, let's just go through the odds and look at, who ultimately are the favorites. Who are some of the odds, the long shots here? Now, I have a website up that allows me to kind of see how things are manipulating through time. And let's start out with the American League MVP odds. And there's been some changes ever so recently. Now, these were updated as of September 1st. So whenever you're listening to this, if it's the 3rd here on Thursday or over the weekend, these may have been in flux ever so slightly once again. But here on September 1st, looking at the top 10 or so contenders for the American League MVP award, there is a new favorite in the clubhouse, and that is Brandon Lowe of the Tampa Bay Rays. We talked about it, how he's been the best player on the Rays thus far, and the MVP could be the best player on the best team. Or is it the top talent and the team that would be the worst without them? And that's what the American League may come down to here down the stretch, because I could certainly see this fluctuating once again. Brandon Lowe just doesn't have enough name recognition to win the MVP award if he has just a bit of a better season than somebody who does. So Brandon Lowe is going to have to be super impressive for the rest of 2020 here. I know he's been good so far, but he is going to have to continue to perform down the stretch. So he is at plus 500, which isn't great odds, meaning they don't know who the heck the favorite is here. Brandon Lowe thus far, let's see, he's hitting 264 with 10 home runs and 27 RBIs. So hitting 264 to me doesn't scream MVP. I think you could look elsewhere. So I don't see him as the favorite. Next up, you're looking at Jose Abreu at plus 600. Jose had a crazy year, or a crazy weekend, not a crazy year, the other weekend when he tied the record for 6 home runs in a 4-game series, I think it was. He's hitting .313 with 12 home runs this year. And how many RBIs? 32 RBIs. Now, the difficult thing for him is sometimes he DHs, sometimes he plays first base. Do they give the MVP to a DH? Do you have to play defense? Where are you at? And he's been known to get cold. So if he has a cold streak, is he going to stay at plus 600? I don't know. It's kind of a conversation that's difficult to have right now. However, looking at Mike Trout, who's jumped all the way to 3rd place at plus 633, Mike's not having a great year when it comes to his own expectations. If you put him up against anybody else in baseball, yeah, he's crushing the ball. 12 home runs. He's got 32 RBIs himself, but he's only hitting 268. So I just think the average being down, his career average right around 300, typically above. Last year was right below. 268's a drop from where he's been in the past. And usually guys who win a lot of MVPs, it's not when their stats get worse than the previous year. After him, you have Nelson Cruz. Another designated hitter. Yeah, he's having a crazy year himself. Let's see, pulling up his stats here. Nelson has 13 home runs. He's hitting .328 so far this year, 29 RBIs. So he's having a monster year offensively, but he doesn't play defense. So can you give the award to a guy who doesn't play defense? How do we feel about that? How do we feel about a designated hitter possibly winning the award. After him, it's Anthony Rendon. Once again, he's on a team that's possibly the worst team in the American League West. So neither of those guys is going to win the award. And then after him, this is where things get interesting. And there's a long shot here. But as the conversations continue to have, I think it's got potential. And that's Shane Bieber at plus 1350 at sixth place. Because right now, this race is wide open. I mean, we're going to talk about the National League, but that one is pretty much a case closed. We know who's going to pull away with that one. So the American League, some of the long shots even after Bieber here as we continue down the list. Luke Voigt, plus 1367. We touched on him having a fantastic start. You got Matt Chapman, plus 2233. Aaron Judge, plus 2167. Francisco Lindor, plus 1967. Jose Ramirez, plus 2033. I guess Brandon Lowe's the leader in the clubhouse because it's going to go to best player on the best team. And if you're looking at Tampa or Oakland, but Matt Chapman there at plus 2233, if he gets hot and Oakland finishes with the best record, if you get in now, bet $100 to win $2,000. I don't think that's a bad value bet based on where Matt Chapman is. So let me pull up his stats very quickly. I want to make sure I don't give you guys some false information here. I want to make sure we have at least a base we're going off of because I'm going off of just the stats in front of me. 10 home runs, 252. Okay, we got to get the average up for Chapman, but if he gets hot, he has the power numbers, and if he finishes around 300, again, the plus 2,000 is where I think you're getting the value there. Maybe not in regards to Lowe at plus 500. Let's pause on the American League. I don't know which way we're going. Now we're going to transfer over to the National League and the odds over for the National League. Let's see as we continue to update here for September 1st in the National League. This one's a runaway, like we talked about it. Fernando Tatis Jr., he's currently at plus 300. Honestly, I still think that's pretty good value. I don't think there's anybody who could do much to catch Fernando Tatis Jr. at plus 300. Behind him, you got Mike Yastrzemski at plus 550. Mookie Betts at plus 567. Both of those guys are having good years thus far, but I certainly don't think they're in Fernando Tatis Jr. In his realm of what he's putting together. Let's see. Let's get an update on Fernando's stats here as of late September 2nd as these games are finishing up. So he's currently hitting .313 with 13 home runs and 33 RBIs, leading the league there. So plus 300, yeah, he's the favorite. Betting 100 to win 300. It's not great odds. If we continue to look down the list of who could be a long shot, I don't really see it, though, in the National League. You got Yastrzemski and Betts in the plus 500. Then you're jumping all the way into the thousands. Bryce Harper is actually next on the list at plus 1333, and he's gone extremely cold over his last 2 weeks. So he was carrying the club, doing very well. Now he's gotten cold. JT Realmuto has gotten cold as well. He's on this list at plus 2,467. But the rest of the ball club's gotten hot and has carried the Phillies, which is why they're still playing good baseball. But I don't see any of those guys winning MVP now because of their performance over the last 2 weeks, unless they really turn it around and Cruz the entire month of September. You have Charlie Blackmon on here after Bryce Harper at plus 1,467. But Blackmon has really faded after his hot start. I say that he's probably still hitting 350 at this point. Let's confirm and see where he's at. But I know he's under the 400 mark, and doesn't seem to be like that's where he's going to finish the year. He's not going to hit that 400 mark, that's for sure. He's back down to 343. So if this continues, he's probably going to finish way lower than that, which will pull him out of the race. Maybe Manny Machado gets in there at plus 2,333. I don't see anybody outside of Tatis Jr. catching him unless he completely falls flat. And then I think Mookie Betts is your next best bet at plus 567. So if you're taking the safe bet, you're taking Fernando Tatis Jr. at plus 300. He should win. It'll still bring you value. It won't pay out a lot of big bucks. But if you think he fades here in September, maybe he gets injured, maybe he struggles, then the next best bet is Mookie Betts. His performance, his odds currently lend you to believe that he will be the winner if it is not Fernando Tatis Jr. So that wraps up the MVP conversation. Again, listen back, guys, if you want to read some value there. I myself like a couple of those guys in the American League like I talked about. And Chapman and Tatis are where I think you guys get your value currently. So let's go over to the pitching side of things now. Let's talk about the Cy Young, the American League Cy Young contenders. Let's go to the top 10 list here as of September 2nd. This one updated here today as well. The leader in the clubhouse is Shane Bieber, of course. Shane Bieber is minus 138. So he is by far and away the leader in the clubhouse when it comes to the American League Cy Young Award. And honestly, I would put Bieber and Tatis kind of very similar in my head in regards to the lead that they have in this award. So for Tatis to still be at 300 and Bieber to be at minus 138 goes to show you how even further they think Bieber in front is, and that is not where I would have put him, or I would not have ranked him that high. So I don't see the value at minus 138 there, even though he is most likely to win the award. You're always one pitch away from an injury and potentially losing out on a ton of money. So second place right now, or second best odds, is Garrett Cole at plus 600. The New York Yankees, he's having a solid year. He has given up the long ball more than he has in years past, so that's been kind of fascinating there with Yankee Stadium, it being a short porch, or if it's just a matter of 2020, juiced balls, all the different variables that could go into what's happening there for Cole in New York. After him, you have Lance Lynn at plus 750. Lance obviously having the best year of his career. We touched on him with the Rangers. I think the Rangers should have moved on from him. I have them as one of the losers that I would have discussed earlier in today's episode. Kind of like Mike Minor last year. You failed to, jump on the opportunity to sell when the price is highest. And now I think next year, if you're looking to move Lance Lynn, there's going to be nowhere near the performance that he had this year, and the return on the dollar won't be as high. And you're getting nothing in Texas. I just kind of don't understand that. You have Lucas Giolito on here at plus 950 after his recent no-hitter in dominance. He finds himself creeping back into the conversation. But after that, it really jumps. Again, Randy Dobnak from Minnesota, Tyler Glasnow, Zach Greinke, Blake Snell. None of these guys are really in the race here. And you're kind of looking at that top five of Cole, Lynn, Giolito, Bieber, and Kenta Maeda, who I missed on that last list. But Bieber at minus 138, obviously way above everybody else when it comes to the odds. So I don't see huge value in the American League Cy Young odds. So let's take a look at the National League. Let's see if we can find anything we like over here. This one a bit more wide open. The leader still, or no, we got a new leader as of September 2nd. We've had some action here. Okay, let's look at this one. Yu Darvish is now your leader in the clubhouse at plus 275. He jumped down from plus 500 a week ago, and a week before that at plus 1550. So you could have gotten you as high as 2,500 in the middle of August, but now all the way down to plus 275. So that's what I'm saying, folks. Jump on these guys when I'm talking about it. Jump on Matt Chapman now at 2230 something. You're going to love it in a couple of weeks. Behind him, you got Max Fried for the Braves at plus 388. He finds himself improving his odds. He was at plus 600 a week ago, plus 1,200 2 weeks ago. After him, you have Trevor Bauer, plus 550. He's actually gone down a little bit. He was at plus 375, plus 380. So Trevor hanging steady, but they like the improvement of these other guys across the board. And then after him, you have Sonny Gray, his teammate there in Cincinnati, and Jacob deGrom at plus 600, mixing it in there. So Yu Darvish, Max Fried, Jacob deGrom, those top guys there. You also have Trevor Bauer. If we're looking at a long shot here, looking at top 15 potential guys, maybe an Aaron Nola at plus 2,000. He's really been, coming on here of late. His odds have actually gotten worse, but his performance has gotten better. So if he continues that through September and the Phillies make a push, I think Aaron Nola could be an outside candidate. Maybe looking at somebody out there in L.A., like Clayton Kershaw, or for the Cubbies, Kyle Hendricks, Walker Buehler. But Yu Darvish is the leader in the clubhouse at plus 275, which I didn't think I would say to you guys at the beginning of this year. So very impressed with you. I do like the value plus 275 still. I think he is the leader. But again, 2 weeks ago at plus 2,000, we could have been on him there. But that'll wrap things up for the third segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. We'll pause right now for a word from one of our sponsors, one of our sister shows, and when we come back, I'll get into a couple of things I want to see in the month of September. It's been wild and wacky. We got a month left. I'm going to talk to you guys about some crazy stuff I'm hoping for over the next couple of weeks. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
Welcome back, everybody, to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. It is Thursday, September 3rd, episode number 261 of the Baseball Podcast, and this is our fourth and final segment of today's episode. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed today's podcast thus far. If you have, leave us a 5-star rating, write a review, send this to one of your friends, shoot a text message, hit the 3 little dots, share messages. Hey, check this out. You're going to enjoy this podcast as we're already into September and the playoff push has started in Major League Baseball, as was evidenced by the trade deadline that took place here on August 31st this year. And here in the fourth segment, we're going to go a little bit all over the place, but I wanted to talk to you guys about things that I want to see in the month of September and maybe predictions that I have for September, but just overall chaos that I want to ensue in Major League Baseball. That's pretty much what this month comes down to. And what do I mean by that? I mean that I want to see all the teams that were winners, quote unquote, of the trade deadline, or all the teams that added at the trade deadline. I want to see them all make the playoffs. I want to see everybody make a run. I want to see playoff droughts come to an end. I mean, if we're looking at it here, the Padres, everybody says they're the big winner of the trade deadline. Well, they have no playoff appearances in 13 years. No playoff series wins in 21 years. I mean, that's all the way back to the last millennium. I mean, 1999. Bam. But they've never won a World Series as well. So, of course, they're going all in. Of course, they're trying to figure out how to reconfigure their ball club. I'm rooting for them to make the postseason. I'm rooting for them to win a playoff series for the first time in 21 years. I mean, a little asterisk, only if it's not against the Phillies, of course. If they face off in the Phillies in the first round, then go Fightins. But everybody else, I hope they win one for the next first time in 21 years. After them, I have the Blue Jays. I mean, I'm rooting for Toronto to make the playoffs. They haven't made the playoffs in 3 years, haven't made the World Series in 26 years, so they're going for it. The Miami Marlins, they added Kenta Maeda, one of the top bats available out there on the market. What do they have in common with everybody else? No playoff appearances in 16 years, no World Series in 16 years, because we all know every time the Marlins make the playoffs, they win the World Series. So don't let them to the dance, or else they're going to win the whole thing, which maybe I shouldn't want them to make it in 2020 then here. So the Cincinnati Reds, no playoff appearances in 6 years, no World Series in 29 years. The Oakland A's, no playoff series wins in 13 years. That's kind of fascinating. with all the success that's happened out there in Oakland. So I obviously want them to win a World Series, or not a playoff series for the first time in 13 years. No World Series in 29 years for the Oakland Athletics. So rooting for all of those teams. I want the Marlins to make the playoffs, the Reds, the A's, the Blue Jays, the Padres, all of these clubs, get over your hump, get back into the postseason for the first time in years. Why not? Let's have some fun. Let's see what happens. Now, having said that, I kind of want to see a team make the playoffs with a losing record. I want to see the chaos that would ensue with the baseball unwritten rules, lifers who feel as if it's a travesty that there's going to be 8 playoff teams in each league and it should be only 4 and 1 wild card team, and that's why you play 162. And I agree with all of that, to be honest with you. I think 5 is fine when it comes to playoff teams. If you want to have a wild card one and done, personally, I think it should be best of 3, but whatever. We're nitpicking here when it comes to this. So, but over 30 games, expanding it to 8 teams, is there going to be a team that makes it with a losing record? I mean, some weeks in the National League, yes. Maybe not now anymore. Honestly, I think the 8 team is right at 500. The Philadelphia Phillies are up to second place now at over 500, but they were tied with the Marlins, who are at 500. And I think the 8th spot, the Cincinnati Reds think that they're not out of it. They're 4 or 5 games under 500, but they can make a push and be right there. And with that starting rotation, or if you're the New York Mets and make a push with Jacob deGrom potentially going 2 out of the 5 games in the first round, you have to feel good about your chances. So let's see a team with a losing record make the playoffs. Let's just see what their reaction would be on ESPN, the reaction here at the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd just be fascinated to see a team get in at 29-31 and then upset, there's somebody else. It's like in the NFL when you get the division winners at 8-8 or 9-7 in the postseason as the 4 seed, like last year, the Eagles hosted the Seahawks. The Eagles were 9-7. The Seahawks were, I think, 11-5 or 10-6. But somehow the Birds, the Philadelphia Eagles, were the home team because they won the division. So I don't know. Let's see. Again, it's craziness. It's 2020. I'm typically kind of a by-the-book guy, but the way this chaos is happening every day that goes by, why not throw it even more into chaos? Let's get a 29-31 team into the playoffs. Prediction, the Yankees, where do they finish? They're not going to finish third behind the Blue Jays, so they'll be second. Some outlandish predictions I've seen online have them going all the way down to third place. Maybe Toronto gets hot. The Rays are legit. I just don't see the Yankees falling down that thing. But one thing I do see here, and this is kind of an outlandish prediction, but based on kind of last segment, like I talked to you about with Mike Trout and everybody else, Mike Trout, this would be the first time in 9 years he does not finish in the top 4 in MVP voting. And again, he's hitting a career low 268 with a career low 359 OBP. He's still up there in WAR. He's still up there in power, still up there in RBI. So he hasn't completely fallen off in any way. But I don't know. I don't think he's going to be up there. It's kind of the LeBron James syndrome. If you're the best of the best and you put in a just average performance, you're not even going to be on the MVP ballot. So we shall see. Mookie Betts, does he win the National League MVP? That's an outlandish prediction that I'm seeing here. Gary Sanchez, does he get out of his slump? I don't know. Maybe. I don't think so in regards to the New York Yankees. Honestly, I don't think he figures it out this year. I think there's a bit of a mental hurdle that he's struggling to get over, and part of it is due to a shortened season. One of the more fascinating quotes I saw this past week was actually given by Joey Votto, who described the 55 to 60 game season as the reason he did not go to college, because he knew he would struggle with a 55 or 60 game season, and it takes him a long time to find his rhythm and get into a bit of a groove. And that's just that self-awareness there. I don't know if it's sarcasm or if there's any truth to it or if he genuinely thinks that, because, I mean, yeah, it's a shorter season, but I played him every summer. I played 55 at Lehigh, then 50 over the summer, then you play like 30 in the fall. So yes, over the course of 162, you're hitting over 300, but each individual season, it's not short enough to not be able to find your groove. I mean, ask Rhys Hoskins. Even though it's 15, 20 games, there's still enough time where if you get hot, you can raise your average over time. You can raise your average over the course of 10 days. But I could see how the pressure gets to it if we're going on 2-3 weeks here. Now that we're into September and you got some guys still struggling offensively, I don't think they're going to turn it around. I mean, like the likes of Christian Yelich, Jose Altuve, a couple of the other premier offensive guys who have hit for a very low average this summer. I don't know if you're going to get an 8 for 12 streak for them to go from 200 to 300. I don't know if you're going to get guys kind of popping off and figuring it out, or if you're just going to kind of see them say, hey, it's a shortened season, it's a crazy season, everybody's going to know it's going to be an asterisk. We're just going to write it off to this is kind of what happened, and we'll take it from there. So it will be fascinating to see, especially like Yelich on the Brewers, who are fading, not really in the playoff push. This next month is more or less just going to be a try to stay healthy, try to play it out, try to gain a contract, try to make more money, try to stay in the league, whatever personally is driving you as a professional, that's what they're going to be dealing with. But I don't know. What other chaos can we get here? Can we get let's get a 3-way tie in the AL Central. I mean, we might as well, right? Between the Chicago White Sox, Minnesota Twins, and Cleveland Indians. We've never had a 3-way tie for a division before. So let's do the 3-way tie where somehow the bottom two play each other, and then the winner of that one plays the 1 seed, but I don't know how they determine who the 1 seed and who the other two are. Would it be head-to-head because everybody played 10 games against each other, so you would have an exact number of games and maybe intra-divisional records, so your record against the AL Central if you're tied there? But I'd be down with, putting the wild card team basically in a win-or-go-home type of matchup and figuring out who should be number one in that division. Let's get a 3-way tie in the AL Central. Out in the AL West, the Astros, could they come back and, upset the Oakland Athletics? I don't think so. Based on their rotation, their performance, Miami could make the playoffs. Luis Robert could potentially make his way into the American League MVP race. It would be fascinating to see. He's the Rookie of the Year favorite, of course, and Tatis in the National League, but, Luis Robert, the last 2 weeks of August here, he hit .341, slugging .902, and homered in 7 of 11 games. So just when we think in the American League it could be Brandon Lowe, maybe your value's on Luis Robert. So take a look at your sportsbook once again at Luis Robert, see where he would be on the MVP ballot, because we know he's going to be number 1 in Rookie of the Year, but see how he would be on the MVP side of things. Uncle Larry and Andrew McCutchen getting hot there in Philadelphia. Uncle Larry, if you don't know, is Andrew McCutchen's alter ego who he found during the quarantine and social media interactions. It's pretty funny. But McCutchen's starting to figure things out, coming off his knee. He's getting on a tear. Rhys Hoskins figuring things out. Bryce Harper struggling. Could they potentially catch the Braves and win the NL East? I don't know. 8-1 in their last 9. This is right after they lost a bunch of games, and Harper came out and said, we need to win 9 of 10, and it's not going to be easy, but it needs to get done. Well, 8 out of 9, and tomorrow night would make it 9 out of 10, so that would be kind of fascinating to see that come to fruition right after Bryce Harper says it. But I don't know. What else could we get out there? What else is going on in Major League Baseball as we're trying to wrap up here? Let me look at today's scores ever so quickly. Recording here late Wednesday night. Like I said, was going to give you guys kind of winners and losers at the trade deadline, but Tom Seaver passing away ultimately threw a bit of a wrench into the outline here tonight, but not a problem. We adjust as we can, and Tom Seaver deserved that segment here tonight, being a Hall of Famer, winning 300-plus games, over 3,000 strikeouts, 6 all-time. Just crazy. So, but in tonight's action, Wednesday night's action, some of this is live, some of it's still going on. The Cubs in the top of the 8th are up 6-2 over the Pirates. They should win again, remain in first place. The Brewers did win tonight over the Tigers, so the Tigers are back to 500, and what was a nice win for the Brewers, bouncing back at home. The Twins putting on a professional impressive performance against the White Sox. They currently lead 8-1 in the bottom of the 7th. The Angels lead the Padres in what would be an upset for sure. That would pay out the money line quite a bit if you had the Angels. 12-24 out in L.A. Just fascinating. Joe Madden certainly not figuring it out in his first year. San Diego looking to bounce back. In the top of the 6th, the Diamondbacks and Dodgers are tied 0-0. Earlier tonight, the Rockies beat the Giants 9-6. That puts the Rockies half a game ahead of the Giants as those teams battle for 3rd and 4th place in the NL West and potentially that last wild card spot with the Miami Marlins. The New York Mets defeated the Baltimore Orioles 9-4. They improved to 16-21, a few games out of that last playoff spot. The Cincinnati Reds defeated the St. Louis Cardinals 4-3. That's a nice win for the Reds. They get to 16-21, and the Cardinals fall to 14-14 as the Reds once again continue to push as they were buyers at the deadline. They think that offense can come around and catch up to the rotation and pitching staff, which has continued to be dominant. The Toronto Blue Jays win 2-1 over the Marlins. They improved to 19-16. It continues to be impressive. Luis Gurriel homered for the Blue Jays in what was a nice win. Sixto Sanchez gets a tough luck loss there. He's 1-1 with a 2.37 ERA, but Ryu was fantastic for Toronto and has been a quality addition for them. The Phillies beat the Nationals 3-0. Like I said, winning 8 out of 9. They are 17-15. The Atlanta Braves defeated the Boston Red Sox. They are 22-14 on the year. The Indians win 5-0 over the Royals. They complete the sweep there. And the Houston Astros defeated the Texas Rangers by a score of 2-1, 20-15 on the year for Houston. Ryan Presley got his 7th save of the season. And the Athletics and Mariners were postponed due to an abundance of caution regarding a positive COVID test in, I believe, the Oakland A's athletic organization. But that'll wrap it up for today's episode of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Once again, shout out to you guys for listening today. I very much appreciate it. It's another quality Thursday out there as we're trekking forward. Labor Day coming up this weekend. Baseball coming down the stretch. Football in a couple of weeks. Sports are back. Weather is nice. It's excellent. Open your windows. Try to have some fun. Try to stay positive out there. Try to enjoy this game of baseball as we only have another, month of all teams playing here. So if you're in one of those markets where your teams may not make the playoffs, do enjoy the next 4 weeks. We earned it. We were together a long time without baseball, and it certainly feels like it's flying by here. But that'll wrap it up for episode 261. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. Please share this with one of your friends. Like, rate, subscribe, rate, review. Do all that stuff. We very much appreciate it here. But I will talk to you guys once again on Monday, on Labor Day itself. Hopefully you guys enjoy the weekend. Stay safe, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.